Have you ever felt like an outsider in a place where you so desperately wanted to belong? When I moved to Montana, I went from being known and connected to feeling completely invisible. And as much as I tried, it felt like every door closed. Well, today, 4 years later, I want to share what that experience taught me about imposter syndrome, resilience, and the surprising friendships waiting for me on the other side of my self doubt. Now, I want to explain when I first went to Montana, the excitement about it. You see, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, and I had lived there my entire life. I had aunts and uncles and cousins like you wouldn't believe. And the friendships that I have were friendships that started in kindergarten or second grade. Everybody knew me, or at least it felt like they did. That sounds kind of arrogant, but it was a small town. So everybody pretty much knew everybody, and it was comfortable. Well, when I met my husband and he shared with me that he lived in Montana, we made the decision that I would move to Montana with him. My boys were out of high school going into college, and it was the perfect time. And I was really excited because since the time I was 18, I said I couldn't wait to get out. But then I stayed and I raised my children and I lived there and I enjoyed it. And I love Youngstown, Ohio. It's home. It will always be home. But I still had this desire to see more of what was beyond the circle that I grew up in. And I moved to Montana and I was so excited. And when I got there, I couldn't wait to start connecting with other women entrepreneurs or just entrepreneurs in general. And I remember reaching out to a digital marketing agency, which appeared to be probably one of the more popular ones that were in that town. And he was great and met with me. And while we were sitting there, he said, you know that we don't really welcome anybody that's not one of ours. And I didn't quite understand what that meant. And he explained that living in Montana, they work with others who have always lived in Montana, born and bred. And I wasn't that. I was an outsider. And at the time, I thought it was kind of crazy. And I really didn't believe him. I just thought, oh, he's afraid of some competition. But now I understand what he was saying. And I understand now the position that he was in. You see, Montana is a state where a lot of them have been born and bred there, and there's a pride that's really hard to describe unless you're there yourself or you know people from Montana who've lived there their whole life. And there's something that now they have all these outsiders moving into Montana and changing everything. And they don't like that change. And sometimes change is good, but I do understand what they're feeling now. When I moved there, I didn't understand that. And I thought it was just gibberish, is what he was saying. But then I started to see that there was truth to it. I wanted to meet other women entrepreneurs. So I started hosting women networking events. And at first it was great. The women that showed up were so grateful. And they all said they were hoping for something like this. There was something already in the area, but they wanted something different. And it was nice to meet different people who weren't necessarily showing up for the other networking event. So it was really good. But then something happened that changed everything for me. There was somebody who lived there who I allowed to get into my head, for lack of a better term. But this person was smart and very well liked, and we were on very similar paths. Well, she kind of held true to what I had heard from this person and repeated to me how she felt with me not being somebody from Montana. And for whatever reason, that really stuck. This time I paid attention and I felt like an outsider instantly. Now, I was already going through some struggles myself, because I had just left everything I knew. I left my family. I left knowing the directions on how to get anywhere I wanted to get, to having to relearn where the grocery store is or where to shop. Everything was different, and the culture was so different. And I remember trying to talk to my husband at the time, who we were um, just engaged, and he would take it personal. So if I said anything that sounded like a complaint, which it wasn't a complaint, it was just I wasn't sure what to do with all these feelings of missing so much and feeling like I was in a snow globe that just got shook up and everything changed. He felt bad, like he had to fix it for me, but there was no way to fix it. Nobody could fix it. I don't even know if I was asking him to fix it. I just wanted to talk to somebody. When I realized what it was doing to him and how it made him feel, when I was talking, I stopped talking and I held it in. And now, when you hold things in, what eventually ends up happening is that it gets worse, because now you start to create your own talk track. And I kept telling myself, you don't fit in. You don't know as much as you think you know. And even though I had a thriving business in Youngstown, Ohio, when I moved to Montana, all of a sudden I felt like I wasn't smart enough to do what I was doing. I didn't have the knowledge that I thought I had. Well, the day came when we decided to move away from Montana, and we ended up moving to Florida. And I was so relieved because it felt so empty there to me. And I couldn't wait to get out. And Montana is a beautiful state. And it just felt like I made no connections. And I lost myself and I lost my confidence. And I wasn't sure what the problem was. And to be honest with you, I didn't realize this for 4 years. And the one day I was going through pictures and I saw this group of women that we had met in Montana at one of these networking events, and we're sitting around and I see the smiles and I remember the conversations and I remember how much fun it was. And I realized, wait a minute, Deanna, like everything that you painted in your head wasn't true. Everything that you were feeling, you really felt, but you made it up in your head. You let imposter syndrome get the best of you. Because I kept going through these pictures and I saw these wonderful friendships, these amazing women that I got to connect with. And when I left, I didn't honor any of those friendships because I let imposter syndrome and my lack of confidence get in the way. And I regret that. I regret that quite a bit. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is because there's a lot of times that something happens and we start to question our ability. And maybe you've moved to a new town and you don't feel like you fit in, or maybe you're part of something that you feel is cliquey and you're not part of that clique. And all of a sudden you start questioning your ability, you start questioning everything about yourself. And I want you to stop doing that and just have a perspective shift. I want you to start to reframe your experience and recognize that the value that you brought to these people that you've met, these relationships, that's what I didn't do. I didn't recognize the value in the relationships that I was starting to form there in Montana. I want you to release any limiting beliefs that you are creating and make room for real connections. And you know what those authentic connections feel like when you really make them. They're different than just acquaintances. They're different than just they're just different. You know what they feel like, and I'm struggling for the words, and I'm being really open right now with everything, and this isn't obviously scripted. There's no outline. I'm just really just talking to you, and I want you to make room for the real stuff and eliminate all the garbage in your head that might be going on. Now, here's some things that I learned. And I wish I had learned them when I was still in Montana so that I could share things differently with those women that I met. But I have reached out to them since then. And I'm looking forward to when I go back reconnecting with them. But what I learned is that you have to embrace new environments. Every environment, and again, I'm talking about moving from one state to the next, but this could be moving from one job to another job. This can be moving from one organization that you volunteer with to another organization. The environment is going to be different. The people are going to be different. Circumstances are going to be different. And a lot of times in all of these scenarios, there may be cliques, there may be groups where you feel like you're the outsider. And don't put yourself there. Don't think in that limiting space. Embrace that it's a new environment. When you do start to, or if you do start to feel imposter syndrome, or you're starting to really question your ability, I want you to push past that. Look at the facts of the friendships that you're making, the people that you've met, the value that you bring, why you were asked to be part of this new job, this organization, or why this group of people welcomed you when you moved from another state into their town. I want you to value what's right in front of you. And I know that this isn't always easy. Trust me, it's not easy at all. And I wish I had learned this lesson 4 years ago, but I didn't. And I've learned it now. And it's really changed my perspectives on a lot of things. I was ready to quit and give up my business because I let it get the best of me. And I think back, if I had done that, I would have missed out on so much. I would have allowed imposter syndrome to win instead of fighting through what I know is true and thriving even more so than what I was doing 5, 6, 10, 15 years ago. Identify those positive relationships around you and lean into self-confidence. I get it that sometimes we find ourselves in unfamiliar places or unfamiliar situations, but we have the power to create our own community and our own connections. To my friends in Montana, this is my apology to you for leaving the way that I left. I hope and I look forward to the time that we can reconnect in Montana. And for my listeners, I want you to take a look around you. Just take a moment and look around you. Look at the friends, the real friends, the authentic friends. Look at the connections and the opportunities, because they may be closer than you think. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you next Monday.